Hello, welcome to Black Men Speak. I'm your co-host J.R. Stewart,
And good evening, everyone. I'm your co host, Tommy Duncan. Welcome to
and
Black Men Speak.
yes, we want to give a special thanks to Liquid for providing our theme music, which we skipped tonight for technical reasons. But tonight we have a very interesting show. We're going to celebrate Black women and their accomplishments and their contribution to society and their contribution to history. So we'll be looking at some, famous women, some not so famous, but certainly women who have made a difference, past and present. Um, so, Tom, we started with our top 10 list, and we have some honorable mentions that we have time we're going to get to. So,
And
uh,
I'm serious, Jimmy. It's this was
it
a
was
tough
hard.
job, man, because I mean there were a lot of
Yes.
a lot of history makers, trailblazers that we had to filter through. And for what it's worth, a top 10 quite isn't enough, but given the limitations of our time, we're gonna talk through what we consider to be our top 10, or your five and my five, and then we'll maybe
It could
we
have
may be
easily
able to
been the
talk about
top
other folks.
50. Yeah.
Easily a
Yeah, it could
top
have been the
50.
top 50. So squeezing it down to 10 was very difficult. So, but we made the tough choices, Tom. I think our list is fair, and hopefully everyone will agree that it's a good list. So
Absolutely.
let's start with number one. Let's start going down
And
our list.
and I want to say it's not in this
Oh,
specific
thank you.
order that
Yes,
we talk about them. So we don't want any sisters
this is
getting
not like
pissed
a
off.
first place, second place, third place kind of a deal. So,
Absolutely, absolutely. So Jimmy, you want to start with your number one?
um, actually, my phone is charging, so I don't have the list in front of me. So
Gotcha.
you can go ahead and be
All right,
the owner of the list.
all right. Good deal. Well, you know what? My number one is someone who should be more well known, and I believe someone who probably doesn't get enough credit, and that is Annie Malone. And not number one in that particular order, but Annie Malone, who was an entrepreneur, who was a philanthropist, a millionaire, and I think practically everybody, Jimmy, knows about Madam C.J. Walker.
Yes.
Who is credited as being, for the first, female millionaire. But before there was a Madam C.J. Walker, there was an Annie Malone. And the reason that I actually start out with her is because when you look at history, and we're not talking about the last 50 years, and we'll talk about some of these other folks, but when you think about probably the most highly credited, wealthy black woman in the United States, you talk about Madam C.J. Walker. But quite frankly, Jimmy, if it were not for Annie Malone, there might not have been a Madam C.J. Walker, because Annie Malone actually had a hair and beauty care business
Oh, did she?
that she
Okay.
that she that she introduced to Madam C.J. Walker, and actually Madam C.J. Walker sold some of her products. I don't know, for those of you who may have seen the movie, and some of that is historical embellishment, but Annie Malone had a hair care and beauty care business for black women, and that is how Madam C.J. Walker actually got into that business. And that's something that a lot of people may not be aware of. And she made a lot of money, especially for that period of time.
Yes, she
And
did.
actually was a millionaire. But most people, of course, credit Madam C.J. Walker. But if it were not for an Annie Malone, there may not have been a Madam C.J. Walker. So I want to start off with her, because I think that a lot of people, unfortunately, don't know enough about her history and her contribution. And not only did she was she well known for that at that period of time, but she made a lot of black women self-sufficient. She gave them the opportunity to be able to make money for themselves, to be able to take care of their households, and she pretty much created the foundation for the black hair care business. Now, we don't want to talk about what's happened since then, but between Annie Malone and who I mentioned a little bit earlier, they created the black hair care and beauty industry.
Okay. Well, Tom, that's a good segue into my first pick, which is Madam C.J. Walker. You sort of touched on her some. in your opening statement there. And the, the reason that I put on the list was for the very thing you just said. She helped others make money also. So it's one thing when you are elevating yourself, but the true secret to being successful is to recreate yourself in other people. So when you can do that, when you can create, 100 of you or 1,000 of you, and you have a winning formula, a winning product or winning service, then you can be very successful. Bill Gates, helped make a lot of billionaires and millionaires in Microsoft in order to get to where he is. And there are a lot of other, very successful people that if you look downstream have help make a lot of successful people. So the secret to success, and I think Madam C.J. Walker helped exemplify this and demonstrate this, is help other people become successful. If you want to be successful, help others become successful also. Don't hoard the knowledge. Don't keep the product. You have to share the wealth. If you're in it just for yourself, well, you may not get very far.
Absolutely, Jimmy. And we may have to, and I think we've talked about this on our show before because we've talked about Madam C.J. Walker
Yes, we did.
on
We
one
did a
of
whole
our
show
shows
on her.
last year. And one of the things that I find quite interesting that we may need to delve into again sometime in the future is that during that period of time, of course, African Americans created and dominated the black hair care
Which is sad,
industry.
Tom.
But now it is dominated by Koreans and Chinese,
Yeah,
and that's something we need to talk about. We don't want to take too much time now, but
no,
that's
we
something
don't.
we
Put
need
the
to revisit.
put the
That whole
tombstone on it and say "Rest in peace." Died.
absolutely,
You know,
absolutely.
hadn't come back to life. So that yeah, we'll talk about that another day. So who's your number two?
My number two is another not so well known personality, Mary Ellen Pleasant. She was
Okay,
an she was an entrepreneur. She was a real estate magnate. I'm sorry. She was an abolitionist, and what she did, she actually self-taught
okay,
herself because she was a slave and she was born a slave. She was born into slavery. But under circumstances, she had a friend. I think actually I would consider more of a playmate. The slave owner's daughter and her became very good, friends at one point in time. And she ended up in interacting with her, learning how to read and getting exposure to a lot of things. She had an opportunity to get away from her environment, and by sheer grit, by sheer discipline, and she learned how to read. She became a business person. She put herself in an environment that were really tough because she was working for other folks, but she became an entrepreneur. She started her own business. She later in life bought real estate. She traveled to California during the gold rush and took advantage of that opportunity. And she moved from place to place throughout her life, not going into a lot of details, but she accumulated a huge sum of money, especially for that period of time, by being an entrepreneur, starting several businesses, by actually funding businesses, small businesses, by accumulating a healthy sum of real estate. She actually was hit, like most people were, by the Great Depression, practically lost everything, and started back over
start
again,
over
and
again.
became wealthy again. And one thing that I found very interesting in reading about her story, you're probably familiar with John Brown, right? And
Yes.
well, she was one of the people who funded that revolution or
Okay.
gave John Brown a huge check to help fund his plans to accumulate slaves and weapons in order to, of course, start a revolt. Of course, we know how that worked out, but she gave a huge sum of money to John Brown, and was one of the primary underwriters of his revolution. And
Wow.
so, Mary Ellen President, it was practically one of the very first millionaires, black female millionaires in the United States of America. Quite frankly, very few people knew about her. I didn't know about her until recently, but I wanted to make sure that we let people know that there are a lot of folks out there who have done massive, massive work without being well known because of a lot of our history just isn't being
Well,
exposed
it
to
isn't
much.
told, Tom, and we don't do enough to learn it ourselves. We would certainly have a lot more to feel good about, knowing that what we're capable of. But when the truth is hidden from you, then it's very difficult. I mean, it is, it's hard. Your self-image is tied to what you know about yourself and your history, and when you don't know it, then you can't have a good self-esteem when you don't know, what you're capable of and what your people have done. So let's move on. So my number two is someone that I think, I'm a big movie watcher, and Tom certainly has not gotten the credit that she deserves. A great, great, great actress, Cicely Tyson. I mean, I just love her work, her body of work. There hadn't been anything of hers that I didn't like. I think she conducted herself with a great deal of class. She held herself in a way that you can be proud of the work that she's done. And I don't think that at no point in her life will she look back on her body of work and say, I'm ashamed that I made that movie or did this for money or took a role simply to keep the lights on. So she's a person I'm pretty sure has probably turned down some roles that probably degraded black women and maybe degraded herself, and she probably paid probably a price for it. But when black people stand up, have high standards, and have great work, then she is certainly someone we need to be proud of. And women around the women, black women, period. I mean, young girls can grow up and look up to Cicely Tyson, and she is someone that you can hold in high esteem and be honored that she represents black women.
You know what, Jimmy? You bring up a very good point. She has always embodied grace, class,
Yes,
intelligence. Beautiful, beautiful woman.
yes.
And the thing, Jimmy, that I think is quite frankly sad
Well,
is that
you know what?
is that
Young
Jimmy,
in
you have
life and older in life, she was beautiful. I mean, she has aged well.
exactly. And Jimmy, the thing that I think I'm even disappointed today is that Cicely was a beautiful, unapologetic, dark-skinned black woman. And for her to have gotten, of course, she didn't get the opportunities that she was
No, she did
deserving
not.
of because she was a dark-skinned black woman. But Jimmy, even if you look at the big screen and the small screen to take, count for me the number of dark-skinned black women that you see on the big or the small screen today.
Um, there may be Angela
Very few.
Davis, very few, but
Viola Davis,
Viola Davis. I said Angela, yeah, Viola Davis,
but
but
very
very
very few.
few. Yes, if you're not Halle Berry or lighter, then your chances are slim in Hollywood.
Gotcha, gotcha. My number
Three.
three, my number three is gonna be Ida B. Wells,
Oh,
and
look at you, Ivy
yeah,
Wells
I,
Barnett. Okay,
yeah, Ida B. Wells.
the
Yeah, I mean,
journalist.
again, another old school man,
Yes,
and I think she is so underappreciated for what she contributed to our cause during that
sure.
period of time, especially. And it's primarily because she was a woman. Because you have to remember that most folks don't know that she was a co founder of the NAACP. Of course, everybody, and that's not to take anything away from W.E.B. Du Bois and all the other folks, but a lot of folks do not realize that Ida B. Wells was one of the original founders of the NAACP. In addition to the fact that when then and now she was a journalist. Of course, she was an advocate for civil rights, but she was one of the premier people who was very vocal, who was
Very vocal.
putting her life at risk at calling out America for allowing the lynching of black men, black women, black children, through her articles, through her journalistic brilliance. And I don't think it can be underestimated the impact that she had politically in this country by showing the United States who they were.
Right.
And when I say who they were, not in a good way.
Well, I ran across her name when I was reading up and studying up on this skank of a president we call Woodrow Wilson.
Hmm.
and how he really tricked black people into voting for him. I mean, he was one of the first Democrat to get elected after Reconstruction, after the end of slavery. And he basically was elected time on black support, on black votes. And as soon as he got
Crazy.
in office, who did he stab in the back and step all over? Black folks.
Yep.
And she was one of the few people who was brave enough, I mean, a few black people brave enough to actually call him out on what he had did. And I was like, you know what, I need to read up on this lady, see who this is. And the more I read, the more impressed I was. But yeah, she was a champion for black causes. She spoke up. She was very outspoken, and at that time, she could have easily been lynched or killed for something for her comments and for her views. So luckily,
Unapologetic, and she was
very unapologetic.
unapologetic
That's
and
correct.
unafraid. Jimmy, Jimmy, I can't think of too many people today who would put their life at risk the way that she did during that point in time.
Tom, you know what? When black folks get around, this is interesting. I don't want to get off subject too much, but it seems like sometimes you get around black people and they start talking. If you just mention white folks and some of the things they've done, you see, you look around the room, people are looking around the room, and you get a certain whisper, that seems to permeate the conversation. Even today, even among ourselves, we are afraid to talk about some things that are wrong in society. So for her to do it back then, and especially when you're going up against a president and his administration, and you're still unapologetic and unafraid to speak up and write about the truth, that says volumes.
Yeah, amazing. Just an amazing woman.
So, Lord, Tom, you're taking up all the good ones here. So, um, my number three is going to be someone I've man had the utmost respect for and admiration for, which is Harriet Tubman for what she done. You can't say enough about the number of people that she helped deliver from slavery into freedom. And the sad thing, Tom, is that when you read her story, how she talks about she could have freed more people if they were simply willing to come. I mean, so many people were afraid to leave Master's plantation, leave a steady sun up to down job with no pay. So, afraid to leave a situation where you have to eat the scraps off the table and the leftovers from the pig, and to leave that whole situation just afraid. And that's sad because I look at today, Tom, and I think we're on the same kind of virtual plantation where we're trapped, and so many people are trapped and afraid to get off the public support, afraid to get off Section 8, afraid. I knew an architect who worked for HUD who told me that he knew people who would turn down jobs, promotion, and pay raises because they did not want to cross that financial threshold where they lost their support. I mean, so that is sad that you're afraid to advance yourself for fear of losing some support, and it seemed like we haven't really made 1 inch of progress in that whole paradigm since slavery. So many people are still afraid to leave the plantation.
I know it, Jimmy. I mean, it's. I mean, and the thing about it, the beauty of someone like her is that this was someone who was not afraid to put her life on the line, life or death, every day,
That is true.
every day,
Every
every
day.
day.
Oh, because
Absolutely.
the rewards for her were great. I mean, if they could have ever, they would have found her, caught her, she would have been hung, burned, dragged through the dirt. I mean, they would have made an example out of her for sure. Um, and for her to overcome her fears and do what she did, I mean, was just remarkable. Absolutely remarkable.
Jimmy. I mean, the thing about it is, these are the type of women that are women and men.
Should look up
You know,
to.
absolutely every day. When you think about people who they have in the frames in their households, these are some of the. We have a lot of sheroes, but they don't get the acknowledgement. They don't get their just due. But these are folks who put just as much on the line as a Dr. Martin Luther King, who put his life on the line every day,
Right.
but during worse conditions than the 50s and the 60s. Malcolm X, but let's not go down that road. But these are women who, during slavery and
Yes.
post Reconstruction, put their life on the line every day.
Laid it out, Tom, every day. Um,
All right, let me figure out who my next person is. I'm trying to I'm gonna try to get a little bit more contemporary, but
okay.
I just have a sensitive spot for folks who just had a lot to overcome because of the environment. Now, my next one is going to be Shirley Chisholm, and I know we've talked about
Yes.
Shirley Chisholm before, who is the
We did a
first
whole
black
we did a
woman,
whole show on her.
absolutely, the
Yes.
first black woman to be elected to Congress, first woman to run for president. And there's not enough that you can say for someone who, in essence, really was groundbreaking
Mhm.
in terms of what she represents, not just in Black America, but in America. I mean,
Right.
right now, of course, we have our, of course, Hillary Clinton, got close. Of course, now you have a Black vice president. But the question is, if it were not for a Shirley Chisholm, of course,
Pioneer.
you know, being a pioneer, how much longer possibly would it have taken? How much possibly would it have taken to get someone even to be a vice president? And so you cannot talk about a Kamala Harris without talking about a Shirley Chisholm being bold enough,
Right.
under those circumstances, number one, to run for Congress, to run for president. I think after her first season in Congress, Shirley Chisholm is an inspiration to so many women of all ethnicities,
And,
and
and,
quite frankly, had no problem standing up to other men in
right.
Congress, because of course Congress is still dominated by white men. But Jimmy, you're talking about the early '70s.
And Tom, I was going to say that you look at the period that she did this in, but
Absolutely.
but what the most remarkable thing to me, Tom, is that she commanded respect. She was a person that when she opened her mouth, I mean, it was like people stopped and listened. She was one of those people who was so intellectually strong that there was no doubt she was not a lightweight, Tom. You could not approach her and talk to her any kind of way and treat her any kind. And when you have and you command that type of presence, Tom, people can't help but respect you. They may not like you,
Right.
but they have to respect you. So to do what she did during the '70s, I'm pretty sure there were a lot of white people, white men, who were bothered because this was a good old boys club. And for a
Still
woman,
is.
let alone a black woman, to come and invade that circle, yeah, I'm pretty sure it made a few people uncomfortable, it made a few people unhappy. But you know what? What could they do? Because you couldn't help but be impressed with her, from being in her presence and hearing, her speak. I didn't agree with all her politics, but man, do I love the way she stood up, the way she commanded respect, and I work to try to have that type of command over my life, and when I'm around others also. I mean, she was just great. I mean, that was greatness.
Absolutely. I mean, and you have to remember, she started out as an humble educator, became an activist, and then obviously became a representative of the people, and a politician. And Jimmy, I mean, you have to. It's hard to describe how brilliant she was in terms of being able
Brilliant,
to
very brilliant.
to neutralize the attacks that she got on a daily basis,
Yes.
being number one, a woman in Congress, and then a black woman in Congress. How brilliant she had to be to neutralize and put the good old boy network in check on their ground.
Yes, that is true.
And that is the beauty and the brilliance of black womanhood in America.
Now that's going to segue into my next selection, which I'm going to give a little background.
Okay.
Initially, Tom, I didn't like her,
Okay.
because I thought she was a little too anti-black men. But
Okay.
I've come to learn that that's not totally true. I didn't get a chance to fully vet her and get all of the views. So now my opinion is totally different. But when you're talking about educated black women, I absolutely love Toni Morrison.
Yep.
Man, I could sit. I don't care what she's talking about. She could be talking about scrambling eggs and cooking biscuits, but she says it with so much grace, so much sophistication, and just so polished that, and she takes her time and she's very deliberate with her words and things that she say. But she has such a command of the English language, such mastery of it. I'm just in awe of just listening to her speak. Um, so, and then once I really started reading her books and getting gotten into it, I mean, I sort of changed my view. And then later in life, I sort of heard some of her interviews when she was a little older, and where she sort of went more into detail about her thinking. And it's like, okay, well, she's really not as anti-male, black male as I thought she was. But we do have someone on the list, Tom, that is still on my, black male against black male list that we're going to eventually get to, I think. But Tony, man, is just like I said. I don't care what she's talking about. I mean, I would just sit and listen to her speak because I just love the way she articulates things, the way she speaks, her command of English, and her books are great. I mean, I do like her stories.
Brilliant writer.
Yes,
Absolutely brilliant writer, brilliant mind.
and these women, Tom. I mean, so far we've gone through the list of all heavyweights. I mean, black girls should all learn who these women are, learn their stories. I mean, you have so much to be proud of. You don't have to be consider yourself and let nobody treat you like a bee or call you this or be out there, slapping your booty together for someone. The women we've mentioned, Tom, would never ever degrade themselves to this level. If I mean, for them to see what's going on today, what we call pop culture, would just be too painful and hurting for them to know that this is how things have evolved. So who's
True.
number four on your list?
Uh, and I think this is actually one, two, three, four. This might be my fifth.
Is it the fifth? Okay, I
You
lost
know what?
count then.
You might, you may be right. It may be number four. My next, you know, um, Angela Davis.
Uh oh.
We've
We
got to
mentioned
talk
her.
about Angela Davis. I know that a lot of folks have probably heard the name, don't really understand the full scope of the woman, but you're talking about someone who has been connected to the civil rights movement, who's been connected to the women's rights movements, who has been connected to freedom and power from your individual level. She was an educator. She's an
Yes.
activist, civil rights activist, powerful and brilliant thinker, powerful and brilliant writer, powerful and brilliant educator. Of course, she had to abscond from the United States because, of course, they were chasing after her because, obviously, she was speaking up for folks who shouldn't be speaking up. So she, after basically being targeted by the U.S. government, ended up going to Cuba.
Going to Cuba, yes.
Absolutely, going to Cuba and kind of riding it out until it was safe to come back into the United States. But man, she did so much landmark work for the cause of Black people, for the cause of women's rights in America. And one of those women also who could go toe to toe with Black men and not cow down, and was just a brilliant mind, a brilliant thinker, a brilliant speaker, was unapologetic in the cause for the rights of not just Black folk, but everyone who has been oppressed, everyone who has been subjugated, poor. Um, you can't even. It's hard to completely address the full scope of how many folks that she has helped throughout her career and throughout her lifetime by advocating for what's right in
Right.
America, based upon its principles, based upon the Constitution. Well, not technically based upon the way it was written, but based upon the principles of why the Constitution was written.
Well, Tom, that's a very good point. And once again, I mean, the women we've outlined here have all been, super smart, very powerful women, and that just goes to show, Tom, that you don't the things when I hear women say they have to do in order to compete in a man's world, like subjugate themselves to certain things, put themselves out there a certain way. That's not true, Tom. I I mean, you can command respect and do great things while maintaining your dignity. Because little secret, men respect strength. And so when you have strength of character as a woman, you have some principles. Men will, I mean, they may not like you all the time. They may call you names, but in the end, they will respect you a lot more than a lot of men have for women today who basically put themselves out there, to be eye candy or to behave a certain way, thinking that that is the way to get ahead in a man dominated world. Excuse me. So I'm gonna move on to my next person, Tom. I'm gonna change direction
Right,
a little bit.
and I think that's your number four because I actually counted mine up and that was my number four. So I still
Okay.
have another one in the top ten.
You still have another one. So
Yeah.
my number four is gonna be Serena Williams.
What?
Yes, I'm gonna change directions a little bit.
Okay.
Um, I'm not a big fan of her husband, but hey, I understand, sister. You do what you have to do. But what she's done for sports and to help elevate women, I mean, she started very young. And in fact, I remember when they were young, and then coming up, and it was Venus, the other sister, that everyone thought was going to be the dominant one. Because Serena was still on the Chucky side for a tennis player, still is. But man, is
Yeah.
she strong and powerful. And what she's done to elevate women and black women in tennis has just been remarkable. And in fact, if you're going to go into professional sports as a woman, Serena Williams would be a good person to use as a role model on how you conduct yourself. I mean, you don't really hear about her, being in trouble, getting any kind of scandals. She's not out here popping out kids. You don't see her getting arrested, doing drugs. Tom, here's a person who has been focused on being the best version of herself as a tennis player since she was able to swing a racket. I mean, her father instilled that in both her and her sister. They have, I mean, she has won so many championships and grand slams, and then tennis pairing doubles championships with her sister, and her sister has done great things also. So I'm not trying to say Serena hadn't done great things, but I mean Venus hadn't done great things, but Serena has just been overpowering, especially during her height of her tennis career. And I know she's not as strong and powerful as a tennis player now, but even at this late stage, I mean, she's still playing tennis and at a competitive level, and even though she's getting up in her 30s. So I'm going to put her on my list as my number four. So she makes my top 10.
Okay. I've got to choose the number five, and then there are so many women that I want to talk about right now.
Okay.
I'm going to bring up someone again who's old school. Most people should know her, but I don't believe that she gets the credit that she even gets. And
I
we,
think
we
you're going to
lost her.
steal my number five, but go ahead.
Okay, she doesn't get the credit that she deserves. Dorothy Height.
Oh no, you didn't steal my number five.
Dorothy Height. She is considered the godmother of the civil rights movement. She's probably most well known for being, a founding member of the National Council of Negro Women, and she's been involved in so many different ways in the struggle. And she's done it gracefully. She's done it quietly. She's kind of one of those people that walks light and carries a big stick. And I think the
Yeah.
brilliance of Dorothy Height is that she was a great organizer. She was a great motivator. And I don't want to say quietly did a lot of things, but she has been behind so many things that have been positive and constructive in the cause for civil rights in America that she does not get credit for.
Right.
She quite technically is one of the really the founding members of one of the most powerful organizations of Black women in the history of the United States of America. If Dr. King is considered the godfather, Dorothy Height quite arguably is the godmother, of the civil rights movement, especially during that period of time.
Right.
And when you consider the number of decades that she has been in the struggle, we lost her, of course, a couple of years ago, but just a massive, massive figure in terms of the cause for justice in America. And, I don't think there are too many words that you can't say, too many superlatives that you cannot help but describe Dorothy Height in terms of what she has done for not just women in America, but for Black America in particular, and
True.
has done it gracefully, has done it beautifully. And again, one of those unsung heroes who I think most people know, but I still don't believe gets enough credit for the impact that she has made in America. So that would be my number
That's
five.
your number
And-
five. Okay, so Tom, my number five. I'm gonna go with a 5A and a 5B, if I may.
oh, come on, man. You
Man,
do it too? Come on, you got to choose the number five.
well, Tom, because I want to bring them up for their contribution, but
Okay,
it
gotcha.
was a dual contribution, so I can't just give one person all the credit.
Okay, gotcha.
And that's going to be Rosa Parks and Claudette Colvin. Now
Yeah,
we did a show on both of them.
yes, we
Definitely
did.
Claudette. We did a whole show just on her, and of
Mhm.
course we know Rosa Parks. And gets all of the credit for not refusing to give up her seat on the bus, but lesser known is Claudette, who actually
Absolutely.
did it before, did not get the credit that she deserved, and I believe it was a strategic decision by the NAACP as
Yes,
to which one of them to back and to make a story behind to build a movement around. And it was decided that Rosa Parks was probably the safer bet, probably being a lighter, more stable. Um, but like I said, Claudette does not get the credit that she deserved. Rosa certainly Parks get all. I mean, she gets the credit that she deserves, and I mean, she actually deserves it. It's not like this is fake praise, but it was something that needed to be done to help spark a movement, and she provided that spark. So we owe her and Claudette a great deal of credit. So
absolutely.
that's my
And
5A and kind of 5B because it's hard to
I,
to
hey,
mention
hey,
one without
you know
mentioning the
what?
other.
I'm with you 150% on that one because Claudette Colvin, man,
Yes.
um, her situation, which led to her case, was about a year before Rosa Parks, the Rosa Parks incident, and so few people know about
That's true.
Claudette Colvin. And it was because of her circumstances, her age, and other things that, of course, to your point, they made Rosa Parks the face of the civil rights movement.
Yes.
But it was actually Claudette Colvin's case that struck down discrimination or began the breaking down of discrimination in Alabama in particular. And that's what a lot of folks don't know. It wasn't Rosa Parks's. Obviously, she was the public face of it, but it
Yes.
was actually the case that Claudette Colvin and her co-conspirators were involved with that actually brought down the barriers in Alabama. And that's what people need to know.
And Tom, I don't know for certain if Rosa Parks. I mean, I've read that it may have been planned, and this was sort of there was the desire to help, bring about a case and to bring attention and awareness to it. So that may be true, that may not. I'm not totally sure because no one's ever actually confirmed it for me. But if that's the case, Claudette Cloven had a great deal more courage in what she did, because Rosa knew that she had the NAACP, the Defense Fund. She had a lot of support around her, and if this was planned, then she knew that she was going to be okay. Claudette didn't know she was going to be okay.
Mhm.
Um, so,
Absolutely.
so it took a lot more, and then
Courage.
courage, and she was a lot younger too. I mean, so this wasn't,
Teenager.
yes.
Teenager.
So and this is unheard of at this time, man. But great, both women, owe a great deal. We owe them a great deal of gratitude and a great debt to them for what they did, and to help bring awareness to the fact that America was not living up to her words that all men are created equal, and to sparking a movement to help bring about and be a catalyst for change. We owe them both a great deal of debt.
Agreed.
So,
Absolutely.
Tom, with the time we have over, because we're a little bit over,
Yeah.
let's go through a few of the honorable mentions that we didn't quite mention. Um, if you have someone at the top of your head, go ahead and go. So we can
You
close
know,
it.
it was hard not to put her in the top five, my top five, but Barbara Jordan from
Okay.
the great state of Texas.
Yes.
Barbara Jordan.
Well, and one that I was going to put, I was trying to debate this. It really came down to Serena or maybe Oprah. Oprah's had a huge impact. I'm not a big Oprah fan though. See, Oprah is still on my list of women I'm still a little upset with, but I do have to give her credit for her for what she's done, trying to pick herself up, to go from local weather girl to huge entertainment, mega um, personality, and so what? And then she's brought some other people along with her, so which is kind of the formula that I like. So we owe Oprah a great deal, although I'm not always happy with the betrayal of and the views on black men that Oprah sometimes I'm trying to say put out there. So
Gotcha, gotcha. My next person on my hard to try to figure out how you're gonna get a top five. You can't talk about this list and not talk about Sojourner Truth. That's another.
true.
Cannot talk about it, but I just had to figure out who my top five was. Not she's definitely deserving to be in that top five. I just had to pick a top five. So Sojourner Truth is also somebody that of course great abolitionist, great thinker. Considering the time and period in our history, what she did, the impact that she had. Sojourner Truth, that would be another one for me.
Yeah, and then to maybe close it out, Tom, somebody else that, and this is hard, man, because there's so many great women, but certainly Maya Angelou deserves the opportunity to be considered, and she
Yeah,
was. It's just that this would have been a lot. It would have been a little bit of a struggle, but a lot easier if it was a top 50 list. Then we could have
yeah.
gotten everybody that's worthy of some consideration, and even then, we still would have had an honorable mention list because there would have been some that we would not have made the list who deserve some recognition also. But to try to squeeze this into a top 10 list is nearly impossible because there are so many deserving people and so many deserving
Okay.
women.
So I'm gonna put a quick one in since you brought up a sports athlete. I had one in
Okay, who
mind,
do you have?
but a story isn't quite complete yet. Simone Biles, the goat.
Oh man, yes.
Goat.
For what she's done for gymnastics, I mean, yeah,
Oh
she
my
is. Yeah, I
God.
mean, definitely the goat. Um, and in fact, when you talk about goats, Tom, I mean, I know we talk about Tom Brady, certainly being the goat of football, but when you talk about the goat of goats,
Yes.
the Michael Jordans, the Tom Brady's, the Simone Biles, it's debatable. I mean, you could toss a coin, but Simone may be the goat of goats when I think about it now. I was putting
Yeah.
maybe Tom Brady there, but what that young girl has done for gymnastics, um, man, is just outright remarkable. And she could still go if she wanted to.
Yeah.
So,
And I think she's still debating. I think she's going to go ahead and go for the Olympics this year since it was postponed from last year. All things being considered, man, she's only, I believe, 22 or 23 years
Tom, that's
old.
pretty
But
old for gymnastics, though.
I know
I mean,
that's the
them girls
challenge.
are
That is
12
the
to
challenge.
16 is when they peak out at 16.
But
You hit 17, 18, you hit
but
puberty.
but she is still so dominant.
Yes,
Even now, I mean, at the old age of 22 years old, she is that dominant. That I mean, that's just unimaginable.
yes. So yeah, she definitely deserves to be mentioned. Like I said, it's trying to do a top 10 list with so many great women is impossible. So you're
Absolutely.
bound to leave off as many as on the list, off the list, because you just can't put them all, squeeze them all in. Although I cheated a little bit with Rosa Parks and
Yeah.
Claudette Cloven. So
All right, we got to close it out now because we're about 45 minutes in. I don't want to
yes,
get cut
we
off.
are. So, anyway, Tom, go ahead and close it out with the prayer. But if you're interested, we're here every Wednesday night at 9 p.m. Central Standard Time. The phone line is open, guys. I know it's on the screen here. We should have announced it earlier, but it's always open during the show. Feel free to give us a call if you want to join in the discussion. And even though we don't post the chat line is still open also. You can send us a text message.
All right, we will close with a brief word of prayer. We come to you, God, again, thanking you for your power, thanking you for your majesty, thanking you for your grace, thanking you for waking us up to see another day, Father, that we know was not promised to us, Father. We thank you for bringing us together again. We thank you for speaking through us. We thank you for speaking to us. We thank you for covering us, Father. We thank you for continuing to keep our heads up, understanding, Father, that there's nothing that we can do that does not come from you, Father. So we ask that you would continue to cover us with your grace, your majesty, and that you would let us talk through all the gifts that you have blessed us with individually and collectively, Father. And in your precious name we pray. Amen.
Amen. So let the congregation say amen.
All right.